In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set a sleeve into the armhole. This is my summer top. This is adult version and I already completed this one. And I'm going to show you how to set in sleeve using my child sample. Here I've got front and back parts already seamed along the shoulders, and here my two short sleeves. Normally I would block my parts before seaming them, but because most knitters wouldn't follow the steps, I decided to leave my top without blocking at this stage and show how to set in sleeve in this situation or in this condition. You can see my front part is knitted with basket stitch. It's textured stitch, so the front part looks pretty flat, and my back of top is knitted in stocking stitch, so you can see the edges are rolled, and it's quite tricky to assemble garment in this situation, but I will do my best and show you how to do this. My top is knitted with cotton yarn in spot weight, which is 5-ply yarn. As you know, cotton is not stretchy yarn, so it's a bit hard to finish all those bind off edges without any holes or make them smooth. So here you can see I still got some slightly over tighten or loose stitches. I mean, I've got both here, they are a bit tight, and between rows my stitches are a bit loose and they form some kind of holes. The same situation along the top edge of my sleeve. Here my transition from one row to another, and here some kind of corners, but if I would knit this sleeve with wool, it will be more smooth, but here we've got what we've got, and I will show you how to place this sleeve correctly into the armhole and how to seam this without any holes, hiding all those imperfections. And let's go ahead. So to set in sleeve into armhole, I will need my large tapestry needle. I need scissors, yarn which I used for knitting of the tops, and set of stitch markers, and I'm going to use both types of stitch markers, lock stitch markers and split ring stitch markers. So my first step, I need to find middle of my last bind off row or middle of my sleeve. I'm going to fold my sleeve in half lengthwise, and I'm folding my sleeve in half, and here on the top I've got my center. Actually, you can just count stitches of your last bind off row and place marker in the middle. Next step, I need to join middle of my sleeve with side seam, not side seam, with shoulder seam. So I'm joining them with lockable marker. Next step, I'm going to join lower part of armhole using a lockable marker as well. As you can see here, we've got a straight portion of our armhole, and then we've got slope on a front and on a back part. It's symmetrical, and then we've got straight line along the shoulder section, but in our sleeve we've got straight section or straight line here, and then we've got very long slope, and this part is slightly curved, or in some cases it could be flat, but in my sleeve you can see I've got little curve line here. So I'm going to place my second marker at the end of straight section, joining front and my sleeve, and here I'm placing another lockable marker for a while. And next section is slope of our front part, which is symmetrical with our back, and I'm going to place my sleeve straight along this line and join it with another marker, and I'm going to use split marker this time. Those split markers are much easier and quicker to take off while you are assembling your garment, or when you're joining your parts together. So now I'm going to place another marker in the middle of this section, along those, in the middle of this big section. I'm continue using my split markers. Then I split my smaller section to two parts and placing another split marker, and I continue doing this for smaller parts, for smaller sections. The more markers you place, the more small distances you've got here, more even your seam. Now I'm going to continue to do this for my second part of my sleeve. Again, I'm placing lockable stitch marker at the end and at the beginning of this flat section, and I'm placing another marker just at the end of this slope section for the back part. Now I'm going to divide this big part to two the same parts or similar parts and place marker in the middle. Now I need to divide smaller sections in half again, and this one. As you can see, my armhole matches the length, the curve side of my sleeve perfectly. Nothing is bigger or nothing is smaller. So next step, I'm going to take my yarn, where my scissors, cut quite long piece and thread it into my needle. So now I'm going to start attaching my sleeve, starting from the lower edge of armhole. For one sleeve I will start with the front section. For another symmetrical sleeve I'm going to start with the back. So what I need to do, I'm going to use a mattress stitch. I'm taking off one of my markers and join my yarn at the beginning of my armhole. I'm going to leave quite long yarn end because it will help me to adjust the tightness of my seam at the end, and I will hide my yarn ends after my all parts are seamed together. So using mattress stitch, I'm going to place my needle under the first stitch of my front part along the armhole and then into the first stitch of my sleeve. As this lower section of armhole the same for sleeve and for the front part or for the back part, I'm going to stitch it stitch by stitch. So I'm taking one stitch from the front part, then one stitch from the sleeve. This section is quite easy and straightforward. So here my next stitch. So next I've got a tiny hole where I got beginning of next row, so I'm making sure that I close this hole. And here we've got another one, so I'm closing this as well. You just pick up strand of the closest stitch and join those parts together. So I'm just removed my second marker and continue joining parts together using mattress stitch. You can see after I close all holes, the seam looks nice and pretty. So I'm going to continue until my next marker, joining parts stitch by stitch. So here I finished my straight section, and now I'm going to seam parts along the slope. And here I'm going to join stitches between H stitch and first stitch. So here you can see the strands between first stitch and H stitch, and I'm going to pick up one strand of my front part and join it with one strand of my sleeve. So now I need to control it, control the tension and join parts together. necessary, you can recheck distance between close stitches and next marker and place marker back if necessary, just to keep parts in place. Actually, you can use lockable markers here as well, or if everything goes smoothly, you can remove one marker and continue without it. If the edge of your armhole matches the edge of your sleeve perfectly, you need to continue joining one strand from front part or back part with one strand of your sleeve. But if your armhole, for example, slightly longer than sleeve edge, it could be caused by design feature, or maybe something was knitted incorrectly. Of course, if the difference is very huge, you will need to reknit either your front part and back part to make armhole slightly shorter, or sleeve section. But if the difference is small, it can be adjusted by seaming. In this case, you will need to see which part is longer. For example, I will try to show this here. For example, let's say this distance is bigger than this one. I mean, the width, the length of armhole slightly bigger than the sleeve. In this case, you still need to place those markers, trying to find middle of armhole and middle of sleeve section. Place marker, and then you will need to adjust your ratio of stitches. You will need, for example, pick up 2 strands of your armhole section of the front part, and then 1 strand of your sleeve. You wouldn't need to do this for every single stitch, but you will need to do this from time to time. For example, you join one stitch of sleeve with 2 stitches of your front part, then continue doing those steps stitch by stitch for a number of stitches, and then again you join 2 strands of front part with 1 strand of your sleeve. This part should be seamed stitch by stitch without missing stitches because they are equal. This lower section of your slope should be stitched 1 stitch by 1 stitch, because we don't want any bulky folds or shrinked fabric around lower part of our armhole or underarms. And if we need to do any adjustment in our armhole, I would recommend doing this in top part of our sleeve. So you stitch this section stitch by stitch without any spreading of fabric, without any overstretching fabric, without any shrinking of sleeve or armhole. But in this section, top section, you can easily adjust it and shrink armhole slightly, or top part of sleeve. Here I finished joining slope of my sleeve. Oops. And I reached the top section, this one, where I've got those small corners formed at the beginning of my bind-off row. So now I'm going to smooth this line, picking up not the stitch, not the strand between my edge stitch and first stitch, but I'm going to pick up this stitch and the first stitch, strand of the first stitch, and join this together with my front part. And then I'm going to start picking up stitches of the top part of the row under the two strands or two loops of stitch. So here, what I'm going to do next, I need to pick up, here you can see I've got a few rows left, so I'm picking up next row, next strand of my sleeve, join it together with the next strand of my armhole, and next step I'm going to smooth this tiny corner and I'm going to pick up the strand of my stitch. This is the first column or first stitch after the H stitch, and this is one stitch row below of the bind-off row. So I'm picking up this strand and join it together with the strand of my armhole. And next step, I'm going to pick up the first stitch along my bind-off row, and this is the first stitch after the H stitch. And because I'm taking two strands of the stitch, I'm going to pick up two strands here as well, so the width of my stitch matches the rows of my armhole. So here I almost reached the shoulder seam. So now I'm going to pick up my second stitch under both loops and two strands of armhole. You can see I've got smooth transition from the slope to top edge of my sleeve. So now I'm picking up another stitch and two strands of my armhole. I'm taking off this marker and continue with the next stitch. So remember, for two loops of stitch, pick up two strands of armhole, two rows. So next stitch and another two rows. Here you can see I almost reached transition between my bind-off rows. This is my first bind-off row, this is my second one. And here I'm going to pick up, actually the hole is here, so I continue with stitches, two strands of my stitch. Here I'm going to pick up one strand of this stitch. This is last stitch before the next bind off row. So I'm going to join one loop of the stitch with one loop or one strand of my armhole, and here I'm going to pick up one strand of my last stitch of previous row and one strand of stitch of my second bind off row. So using this method I closed the hole between rows, and here I need to pick up 2 stitches, and now I need to continue picking up 2 loops of stitch. I need to remove my middle marker and continue for second part of my sleeve. So one more stitch, tie the yarn slightly to make sure you've got nice and smooth seam. And you can see here again I've got hole between bind off rows, and now I'm going to pick up one strand of the last stitch, join it with one strand of my armhole, and now I'm taking one loop of last stitch and one loop of the stitch row below, and I'm closing the hole. So now I'm double checking my armhole. Maybe I'm going to place additional marker here and continue joining my sleeve and armhole. Remember, here we've got stitches, we still attaching the top part of our sleeve, so I'm pick up 2 loops of 1 stitch and join them with 2 loops of armhole, 2 strands of armhole. Next stitch, and 2 strands of armhole again. This marker. Here I reached my second corner, and I'm going to smooth this corner the same way, but before I'm going to adjust position of my marker. So here one more stitch, and last stitch before I smooth my corner of sleeve. So here I need to pick up 1 strand of last stitch and join it with 1 strand of armhole. This marker keep falling off my knitting. So placing this marker back, and now I continue seaming slope of armhole, slope of sleeve with armhole of my back part. So here we reached our final section, lower part of armhole of the back, and here we need to join two parts stitch by stitch. Again, here you can see we've got transition from one row to another bind of row, so we and here two loops of last stitch here and here. So as a first step we can join first loops, and then we take one loop of one row and another loop and one loop of another row. So it's formed our stitch, and we do the same from another side. One loop of one stitch and another loop of second stitch, and here you can see no more holes. Oops. So here my last stitches, and I closed, or I placed my seam and attached it to my top, and at this point I'm going to control tension of my seam, and next step I need to attach second sleeve, and then I'm going to next step I'm going to close sleeve seam and side seam in one go using mattress stitch. So remember, when you are setting on your sleeve, there are two sections which should be attached stitch by stitch without overstretching of your parts or without shrinking them. So this section, lower part of armhole, where we've got matching sections of sleeve and front and back parts, and approximately few centimeters here should be attached, should be joined stitch by stitch without any overstretching as well. It would be good if you can do the top part without overstretching as well. And here you've got the distance, I would say it's 1/3 of your armhole, where you can make some adjustment and change your ratio for stitching. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and you will find a few useful tips which you can use for your own projects or for your own designs. So remember to subscribe to my channel, and until next time, take care and happy knitting!